I'm going to give folks a moment. Hi, everybody. Just going to give folks a moment to come in here for a minute. We're going to talk a little bit about the Minnesota Freedom Fund. How are you guys doing? I've been working on a story. A lot of research is going into the story that I'm working on right now. I pretty much spent the holiday weekend and this whole week doing research I'm working on right now. So that is why you haven't seen or heard much from me. But I wanted to pop in to talk to you about the Minnesota Freedom Fund. How's everybody doing tonight? So the concern that I have had with these funds, as you know, is based on what I learned here at Standing Rock. What we learned at Standing Rock is that defense funds were created and funded to the tune of millions of dollars. And then that money was not used in the way that people donated. The expressed purpose of the bail funds, of these legal defense funds, was to sue either the administration, the Army Corps of Engineers, or Morton County, or some entity to bring justice to the cause, right? The injustices being done to Native Americans, specifically at Standing Rock with regard to the poisoning of their water, right? Or the money that was collected from Freshet, the money that was collected from the Water Protector Legal Collective, formerly the Red Owl Legal Collective, and other legal collectives like the Lakota Law Project and others. You know who I'm talking about. You know these people collected millions of dollars that were intended for a thing. Now we are finding that a lot of the people that had federal cases for which the majority of these millions of dollars were set aside, supposedly allocated for the purpose of the federal hearings, because they're more expensive, and those people were facing longer jail sentences. Now we're finding, as those cases have been going to court, that almost all of them have taken a plea deal, that many of them are not being funded, many of them are not being paid. So what happened to the money? If Freshet, the Water Protector Legal Collective, the Lakota Law Project, the Red Owl Legal Collective, whatever groups that collected money, Revolution, Truth, there are others. I was paying very close attention. They all dogpiled on Standing Rock to collect money supposedly for lawsuits and legal defenses that never occurred. And by the way, people like Kathleen Bennett, an innocent Oglala Lakota elder whose mother was forcibly removed from her under false pretense, she was facing 20 years in prison and left to rot. And there were other examples of water protectors, of actual activists, innocent people that got caught up in one of these protests, in one of these theatrical movie sets, where people were aware that they were supposed to create a violent clash with police, while some people were innocent, while some people were unaware and didn't know that what was taking place for a movie, a documentary, to raise money and to get people in the news. So when these protests started happening all over the country, I said to you, be beware. Be careful, because we've been lied to before. And you may, instead of putting your dollars into a fund that is supposed to help bring justice in an unjust world in America, that you might actually be funding bad people and bad things. So let me show you what I've learned about the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Are you guys familiar with the Minnesota Freedom Fund? Hold on just a second. I need to be able to look at your questions and comments and stuff. So, everybody familiar with the Minnesota Freedom Fund? Let's take a look at it. I don't know if you're going to be able to see my screen, because I know that this thing loves to screw up whenever I show you my screen. So hopefully this will work, and we'll be able to look at this website. This is the website for the Minnesota Freedom Fund. So let's take a look at this together. It says, at Minnesota Freedom Fund, we believe that wealth should never determine who is kept in jail. That's what the money bail system does. It puts a price on freedom that only a few can afford and many cannot. The system is unjust. So, according to this page and what they do, and it has some of their recent tweets over on this side. And what it says is that the latest tweets from June 30th of 2020 show that their Freedom Fund, people showed up and put $1,000 to work. Now 91 more people have been released from jail and immigration detention. So, this money is used both for getting people out of jail and also for getting people out of immigration detention facilities. Who are we? Here are the people involved in the Minnesota Master's in Public Policy and a BA in International Affairs. And Elizabeth Taylor over here, Shiro, is a communications director. She completed a PhD in organizational leadership policy and development at the University of Minnesota. We have Marina Pollock, volunteer coordinator. She worked in community and labor organizing in Oakland and Milwaukee. Board, Octavia Smith, Mirella Ceja Orozco, Vice President, Steve Boland, Treasurer, and Michael Friedman, Jared Mollenkoff, Rashad Zanders. Then we have Darren Carrington. It looks like the person who's this is their inside counsel, attorneys. And that's about it, okay? So that's who the Freedom Fund is. Now let me share with you what they've done recently. This is according to a post from Guardians of the Youth. Okay. I remember there was some discrepancies years ago with this, but did not find out the extent. Okay, Derek, I'll look forward to your call. Okay, so let me read to you what this says. This is from the Guardians of the Youth. Disclaimer, it says, I am not naming any of the political parties or the politicians that support the Minnesota Freedom Fund, but I will Remember that there were people, specifically, I believe, from the squad, you know, the squad, that were raising money for the Minnesota Freedom Fund. There's a lot of people. I bet you I could go on Twitter right now and type in hashtag the Minnesota Freedom Fund and find out. And you could too, and see what political persons, what political parties were saying, go put money in the Minnesota Freedom Fund. Okay? So you can look that up. But there is definitely some political actors involved in raising money for this group, so that you can look into the story of its corruption without any bias. The citations are as proof. The citations of proof for what I'm about to tell you are in the photographs. And here's the story. So it says, what is the current issue with the Minnesota Freedom Fund? The Minnesota Freedom Fund contributed to the release of a registered sex offender who's accused of raping an 8-year-old girl. Timothy Wayne Columbus is a 36-year-old man who was bailed out of Minneapolis jail in July. He is accused of sexually assaulting an 8-year-old girl in 2015, and he faces up to 30 years in prison if convicted. Court records show he signed a document saying that the refunded bail, when he shows up for court, will be returned to the people that paid the bail, and that is MFF, which is Minnesota's Freedom Fund. So, the information I am about to relate to you is graphic. So if you are faint of heart, or if you do not want to hear about rape, description of rape, please leave the room at this time. So this is what the victim stated Tim had done to her. He said that Tim laid her on the couch and held her down as he unbuckled his pants and pulled down her pants. The victim stated he then put something inside, he put his thing inside of me. The statement of probable cause reads. The victim, the little 8-year-old girl, said that he penetrated her. Tim told her not to tell, continued to penetrate her. Columbus was considered a friend of the victim's family, but had abruptly stopped visiting the family around the same time of the alleged assault. The statement said the girl did not tell anyone about what happened until years later, according to the statement. Columbus is a registered sex offender for a separate incident. He's already a registered sex offender for a separate incident. Before he was arrested for allegedly raping the 8-year-old. The Minnesota Freedom Fund said they do not, quote, they do not make determinations of bail support based on the crimes that individuals are alleged to have committed. The nature of the crime that they committed does not determine whether or not they use this money to bail those people out. Are you aware of that? As a person that is giving to a bail fund, are you aware that they could be bailing out a sex offender, a rapist of children? And are you okay with that? Hold on just a second here. I have to get to the second part. Okay. So here is the Guardians of the Youth post. I know it's small and you can't see it, but there are many attachments there. Hopefully you can see part of that. And this is what it says. The Minnesota Freedom Fund, it says it doesn't take into account the crimes, right? Quote, "We are, however, taking steps to strengthen our internal procedures for ensuring that those we bail out receive support, especially if they are in need of housing or medical treatment." So, what do you think should be done? It says, from the Guardians of the Youth post, "I think that little girl needs help, and it's a nightmare that a registered sex offender who allegedly raped her at the age of 8 is getting more help than she is. I think we should all show caution to the Minnesota Freedom Fund in the future and watch and see if this kind of thing happens again." Oh, yes. So let us take a look at these documents. This document here shows the amount. Here are the bail amounts. One of these was paid by the Minnesota Freedom Fund to secure the release of this man, Columbus. Okay? That's one. Also, this document, which I'm showing you now, has the name of the Minnesota Freedom Fund here with regard to Timothy Wayne Columbus. Timothy Wayne Columbus. And you can see this document is titled "Request to Return Bail to a Third Party." So this is a document that allows for bail money to be returned to whoever paid it. Request to return bail to a third party. And who was that returned to? Timothy Wayne Columbus wanted this money to be returned to who paid it, the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And you can see there's his signature. So, we know that they paid the bail for this man. And of course, this is the statement of probable cause in the arrest. This is the statement of probable cause in this arrest. I'm going to read to you from the statement of probable cause. I think it's important that we know the nature of this crime because obviously the Minnesota Freedom Fund doesn't care what kind of, they said in their statement that they do not take into account, so they don't care. They do not care what the nature of the crime that they are bailing people out with this money. Okay, they don't care what happened. Doesn't matter if you committed arson, if you burned down a building, if you raped a child. You can still get bailed out. The complainant has investigated the facts and circumstances of this offense and believes the following establishes probable cause. On August 23, 2019, the Minneapolis Police Department began an investigation into the maltreatment of a known 11-year-old juvenile female, hereinafter named Victim. During the course of the investigation, Victim reported she'd been sexually assaulted by a friend of the family years earlier. Victim believed she was 8 at the time. Through investigation, the family friend was identified as Timothy Wayne Columbus, date of birth 10/17/83, the defendant herein. Victim, her parents, grandmother, and defendant were all interviewed during the course of this investigation. Here's what the police learned. The victim currently lives with her grandmother in Minneapolis in Hennepin County. When she was 7 and 8, she lived with her mother next door to her grandmother. During that time, her mother spent a lot of time with a friend named Tim. Victim reported during a corner house interview that Tim sexually assaulted her at her mother's home when she was approximately 8. Victim said Tim laid her on her couch and held her down as he unbuckled his pants and pulled down her pants. Victim stated that he put his thing inside me. Victim stated Tim told her not to tell anyone and continued to penetrate her. Victim did not tell anyone what happened at the time, but years later told her family. Victim has not seen Tim since the incident. Victim was asked to positively identify a photograph of defendant. Upon seeing the photo, she had a physical reaction and became extremely upset. The victim was able to share with the social worker that the photo she saw was of the man who had assaulted her. The victim's mother confirmed that the defendant would visit their home frequently and spend time with victim during the time period victim reported the sexual assault occurred. Victim's mother stated she learned years later that something happened to her daughter, but she didn't know the full details. Defendants abruptly stopped seeing the family about the same time victim reported the incident had occurred. Victim's grandmother also confirmed she believed defendant had hurt the victim in some way a few years ago. Victim's grandmother stated that one day, when defendant was leaving her daughter's home, she saw victim outside and heard defendant tell victim, "This is our secret." Victim's grandmother thought the statement was strange and asked victim about what that meant, but victim did not want to talk about it. Defendant was interviewed by police during the investigation. Defendant confirmed he knew victim's mother and victim herself. He confirmed he spent time with the family during the time period victim described. He also admitted he had abruptly stopped visiting the family a few years ago, though he stated it was due to a conflict. Defendant denied victim's report of abuse and stated victim always really liked him and he was protective of her in her chaotic home environment at the time. Defendant had prior juvenile adjudication for criminal sexual conduct in the second degree in court filing 80-JB-99-050006. Defendant is a registered predatory offender and has on prior conviction for, I think that's a typo, one prior conviction for failure to register. So he's a registered sex offender that failed to tell people when he moved or where he was living so that he could be listed in the registry. The defendant current whereabouts are known to his registration requirements. However, due to the seriousness of this crime and the danger posed to minors in the community, the state requests that the complaint issue by warrant. Issued by warrant, I guess, for his arrest. Anyway, this man was deemed to be such a threat to the community that they wanted him off the streets right away. And the Minnesota Freedom Fund bailed him out. Folks, that's a serious, serious problem. I'm going to keep my eye on the Minnesota Freedom Fund and any other bail funds. I'm always very leery of who runs those bail funds, who runs those legal funds, and what they're really supposed to be doing with the money and how that, comports with the expectation of people donating to those funds. So I will continue to watch those and bring you reports on how those are being used or misused in this case, as well as continuing to do research and investigation into other matters, which I will hopefully be bringing you a report on very, very soon. That's all I have for you guys today. Let me check and see if you guys have any questions or comments real quick. I'm so sorry, Tina. It's very difficult for children when those things happen. They're traumatized for life in many cases. And it's really disturbing to me, the lack of resources for our missing and murdered families, for victims of sexual assault and rape. The resources, the mental health facilities, all of that is not available, and the support is not available. But we have funds to immediately get people out of jail and back on the streets. And that's... Thank you, Derek. I'll take a look. I agree, no child should ever go through this. Let's talk about sex trafficking from Standing Rock, Minneapolis to Duluth is the corridor. Let's do talk about that, Derek. Let's do talk about that. I have always wondered about the aspect, because there were so many sexual assaulters, so many sexual predators and child molesters that were put into positions of security and almost like some kind of enforcement force at Standing Rock. And so many people that were involved in these groups of healers and security were themselves sexual predators, sexual assaulters. People that went on to be leaders within the missing and murdered Indigenous women groups. And I just have to ask myself, is it a coincidence that so many of these people that are part of these groups also happen to be predators? I don't know how that happens so frequently and is just merely a coincidence. I feel like there's something else going on here. And definitely I want to get to the bottom of how that works, because trafficking of human beings for work, for slavery, for sex, these are some of the most difficult crimes to prosecute. These are some of the most difficult crimes to capture, because smugglers and traffickers many times are operating in conjunction with their victims. And so when the line is crossed between being complicit with your smuggler or your trafficker, and when that changes into being exploited, or how that line is blurred and crossed, it makes prosecuting, it makes investigating these types of cases all the more difficult. So any leads, any information that you as the listening public have that can help capture or expose predators that are putting our women and our children at risk, that is what we need to do. That's the least that we can do to try to hold them accountable. All right, folks. Well, yes, Derek, we will start. We'll start in that neighborhood right there. That's the right neighborhood to start in. Don't you know, right? You know. Okay, folks, have a great evening. Have a great weekend. I have a lot of very, very impacting reports for you in the upcoming week. Have a great weekend. God bless. Good night. Take care.